have like everything that.
Like if he can get the job done.
Yeah, dude, it's good. It's a good community. Not too many people, real work.
What's the rate?
It's it depends if you do a commitment for a year, 6 months, or month over month. I did 6 months because I didn't know what to expect.
6 months up front?
No, he charges you every month. I'm paying 200. It's 15 pounds in muscle. I'm not super deep with anything, but it's interesting
1 minute.
to see.
All right.
1 minute to.
It's just interesting to see that it's just like this.
See, I'll post it on things. It's gonna be from 6
And I've
to
seen
8.
people be at a certain weight in fat, but then lose all the fat but still get the same weight because it flipped into muscle.
Yeah. So
But they look 3 times smaller, but they're the same size.
I was weighing like 182, and now I weigh 180. Like 15 pounds.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the next MakerTalks. This is Photography 101. I am your host, social media coordinator here. My name is Zach, Miss Zaxon if you're nasty. To my left, you know what? I'll let you guys introduce yourselves.
All right. I'm Andrew Hancock.
I'm Marcus Owens.
I'm Luis Cara.
That was terrible. What do you do?
I'm a photographer, most known for my sports work. My roots were as a photojournalist, so I'm used to covering virtually any type of assignment there is in any genre. I've done a decade with Sports Illustrated. I do work for ESPN, pro teams, college teams, leagues, athletes, and everything in between. So.
I'm most known for my fashion and lifestyle shoots. I have a large array of celebrity clients, but mostly just passionate about creating artistic work with whoever.
I'm nowhere close to where these guys are, honestly. No, but I do portrait photography and fashion photography. Been doing it for about 7 years. And yeah.
All right. Yeah, I had a chance as I was going through, learning about our panelists, and I got pretty deep on all of your websites. Really looked through some portfolios, and of course, your body of work is amazing. I can just say that there is such a wide variety of not only subject and style, but how you go about accomplishing such a high quality photo. There's 3 different paths here. So I really can't think of a smooth way to segue. So I think we get right into our questions, and we'll see how it goes.
Cool.
I've just started to get off the rip here with how do you prepare for a shoot? And I don't mean just checking your equipment twice like Santa Claus or wearing a lucky sock. I want to know what is something that you've learned in your experiences that now every time you're going out on a shoot, you're ready, you're doing.
I guess I'll start. For me, it's research. Like if I'm going to a new stadium or I'm working with a new athlete or whatever, like I'm going to go and I'm going to research the venue and see what it's going to look like. If it's going to be an outdoors game, like I got to know what the forecast is going to be, where the sun's going to be coming at different times, the whole 9 yards. So I mean, for me, like just being really heavy on the pre-production end and doing my research, so I'm best prepared for whatever I walk into, and then always be the first one there, last one to leave. I've got a big project I'm in pre-production in right now, so now it's the point where we're just kind of scouting locations and then kind of knowing, all right, well, what locations are going to give us what different looks at different times in the day, looking at studios, obviously looking at doing something here for one of the key things. So
you guys hear that?
Yeah, a lot of pre-production and just really doing the homework and making sure that no stone is left unturned and trying to consider everything that we need to do to make something happen. So.
Awesome. So super thorough planning. I've mostly worked on like film sets, so it's going to come back to this a few times as I try to make sense of this in my own brain. Sure. But to me, it sounds like you're doing basically the work of a whole production team in pre-pro. So that whole team of ADs, the location scouting, all of it, you're directly involved, making sure that you are turning those stones and finding whatever bugs are on the other side.
Yeah, especially from a creative standpoint, because I mean, everything starts and stops with me. And then depending on the project, I'll bring in a producer just to kind of help with the legwork and putting everything together, especially if I'm juggling multiple projects at the same time. And so like right now, as far as like, your Santa's list thing and checking everything twice, I've got 16 cameras loaded up, ready to go to New Mexico tomorrow to shoot horse racing this weekend. And so we'll have 14 remotes set up all over the track. And so I'm already going through the planning list. I'm like, all right, this camera, this lens here. So because, they cross the finish line once, and it's not like thoroughbred racing where they're going to make a couple loops around the track and everybody's going to be strung out and near the rail at the finish line. This is quarter horse racing, so it's like the 100 meters in the Olympics. They're going to be spread out all the way across the track, and it takes them 19 seconds. So it's quick.
Not a lot of time.
Not a lot of time.
How about you, Marcus? Does your prep style differ in any significant way?
I also do pre-production, but fortunately I have people that help me with that. So personally, I've learned that a lot of my clients lean on me for the energy of the set, so I make sure that my energy is good. So I actually go into isolation a little bit, like the day before, or maybe like the morning of my shoot. I'll go somewhere, find some music. I might go work out or go for a run, or just turn my phone on Do Not Disturb, and I just kind of make sure that I'm good mentally and spiritually, because when I go on set, the results are gonna be pretty much based on how I direct them, how I make them feel, how I make the room feel, and how I just kind of coordinate the whole set. So I just make sure that I'm at peace in my mind before I create.
Yeah. Totally, that makes sense. Getting like all centered and really finding like the mindset you need to be in to get the best out of whatever shoot that is, whatever the energy you need to bring there is. Awesome. How about you, Luis?
Well, personally, whenever we choose a style with the model or the client and me, I usually scout a location using Google Maps, for example, is really useful. I use the street view a lot. I shoot mostly natural light, probably 90 or 95% of the times. So I also use tools in Google, like there's a tool called Sun Calculator, and it will tell you the position of the sun at what time of the day and how it hits. From that, sometimes I come earlier or probably even one day before, just to see how the sun is interacting with everything, because I usually don't even use reflectors. I use surfaces for doing my work. So I use windows of cars, windows of buildings. You can use the cement of the floor, walls, different colors. So it could be like white walls to reflect more light, or black or darker walls to absorb it, things like that, to create shadows and light. So that's mostly it.
And okay, cool. So using Google Maps, you start to get this idea of the environment and how you're already going to use that environment to affect your light. That's actually really cool.
Yeah, and I like also, as Marcus is saying, preparing physically. You know, you never want to have like being upset from the stomach or anything like that. So I usually try to eat safe food and all that before that. You know, you never know, especially when you're out in the field. You don't know what to expect.
If anybody wants to know how Luis was feeling about today, I'm pretty sure. What was the breakfast again?
Oh, well, today I just did protein stuff because I hate the gym in the morning. So, but protein shake, protein bars.
I don't know if you really came at this with passion. I'll move on to our next question, and this one should be fun. Like I said, we've got three pretty distinctly different styles of photography going on here. And I really want to know, how did you develop your own niche?
Man, that's a tough one. I don't know. Everybody would always say, the kind of cliche line is, find your niche and milk it for all it's worth. But I've always rejected that. Kind of pulling from sports, I'm like, well, I want to be like Michael Jordan, to where I can play and be the best at all 5 positions on offense and guard the best player on all 5 positions on defense. And so until somebody tells me like I can't be the best at everything, like that's my pursuit. So like if I want to turn and make a pivot toward landscapes, then I'll go all in on that. But that's just from my roots as a photojournalist, where you didn't know what you were going to be shooting from one day or from 1 hour to the next. You had to be able to handle everything. So for me, it's just I like. There's a lot of ideas I can get from doing landscape photography that I can then apply to sports, and there's different things I can then bring into the portrait work, and then just allowing all that stuff to kind of cross-pollinate and kind of drive creativity. So for me, I'd say whatever my style is, or whatever somebody would consider it to be, it's an evolution. So it's constantly changing.
For sure. It speaks for itself. I don't have a quippy remark for that one. We'll hand it right over to Marcus.
I'm rebellious.
Okay.
So anything that's like traditional to photography, I pretty much go the opposite direction of that, just because I like to push myself. I don't like to be boxed into any certain form or any certain type of like expression. I think like recently, I took a military parachute to the salt flats of Utah, and that was really the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. But I just believe that when they have created a structure for us to follow, we can push a little bit further past that. So my style just came from just that. Everybody kind of called me, my name, a storyteller, because of how I create, and it has more of a feeling to it than just the image. I like to say that I don't really shoot pictures, I shoot feelings, I shoot emotions. So I'm really trying to evoke how the person feels in an environment, or how they may be thinking in an environment versus just how they look. So.
If you haven't seen the photos involving that military parachute on the salt flats, it's awesome. There's a few of them. It's a like small series. I don't know if that would be the right way to say it. Yeah. There's a few shots from the shoot. It's really cool stuff. You guys got to check it out on Marcus's Instagram. All these guys' Instagram handles are up there. You can follow them. How about you, Luis?
When I started, I remember when I started doing photography, I started with a friend that was a wedding photographer. And he was the one who helped me understand the camera, at least the buttons, what they do. And one of the assignments was, hey, let's go and shoot strangers in the street. So at one time I just got out. I was living in Mexico City back then, and then I was starting to shoot some older people, and just the expression of a stranger not knowing you, that doesn't really need to smile or say anything, just what they communicate with the eyes, the essence, was that what caught me. So in my photos, that's what I try to do, just get like a really natural and raw expression from the people. Because to me, one of the most important things is the communication from the eyes. So that's what I focused more on. That's what caught me, and that's what I focus on.
Okay, cool. So we've got, unique approaches, like we've been saying, that led to these different niches. Andrew receiving orders handed down the line, go take a picture of this, has led to the utmost versatility and preparedness because you had to be. Marcus has got this style that rejects whatever rules of photography there are and says, no, I'm not taking a photo of a subject, I'm taking a photo of a feeling. It's cool. That's really cool. And then, you had that assignment that was like, okay, portrait photography is actually really sick. Is that like when your love affair with portrait photography kind of ignited?
Yeah, I think so. It started developing, and then I was just transferred actually from Mexico City to California, and that's where we didn't know anyone. I just moved with my wife and my 9-month-old son, and I was like, how do I get to know people? And hey, do you remember your project of shooting strangers? I think it was like 6 months ago when I started to try to do it. I think I photographed like 2 or 3 people. But then when I moved to LA, that's when I'd go out. I started shooting bloggers and all that kind of stuff, and it just caught me.
Nice, super cool stuff. We touched on this a bit earlier when we were talking about how choosing an environment based on how the light's going to play with your surroundings. Do you guys have like a go-to lighting setup, indoor or outdoor? Do you have like, give me 2 panels and a softbox and I'll show you God kind of feeling, or?
For me, no, not really, because every assignment is going to be different. A lot of it's going to be determined on what the client wants or what the needs are of a particular thing. But I'm comfortable going available light, and then for like my heavy ad shoots and things like that, I mean, we're talking 1,000, 1,500 pounds of gear that are being brought in, and anywhere from like 6 to 10 strobes, and we'll have an entire set built out. But even though we could have 10, maybe 12 strobes on it, they're not all going at the same time. Mm-hmm. So I mean, back in my days whenever I was really coming up with Sports Illustrated, like whenever I started doing some covers with them, we have sometimes 5 minutes with an athlete. Like that's all that we're being given. So you have to get as many different looks as you can for your editors in those 5 minutes. And so you have a big setup like that, and we'll spend a couple hours to get everything ready. But then just through changing channels on the pocket wizards, we're able to go through, toggle lights on and off, ding, 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 and then the athlete doesn't have to move, and we can get 4 or 5 different looks. And if anything, just not having to take them very far, and that makes life a lot easier. So
very impressive. Sometimes they'll like want me to take a photo of a room, and I'll get so stressed out I'll almost cry. How about you, Marcus?
You said outdoor?
Indoor, outdoor, any lighting setup that you feel like you've gotten intimate with?
I don't really have a go-to because
Okay.
I'm in a lot of different environments.
Mm-hmm.
What I learned is I do a lot of press runs. So it's taught me how to just light a room, period, with anything. Because same as him, I'll get a client and I might have 45 seconds because they're late to their interview or something like that. I'm at 60 seconds, 2 minutes. So I've learned to just use everything in my environment to light itself. Sometimes I'm using a on-camera flash. Sometimes I have a strobe and I put it in a corner and light the whole room. Sometimes sit in this chair and I'm gonna use this table lamp right here just to light your face type of thing. So I just adapt to all my environments.
Anything and everything, got it,
Yeah.
for sure. Louise, street photography ends up being a little more difficult.
Well, I think it's adaptability as well, especially when you're in the street, for example. You have like a lot of elements that you can use either to reflect light or to block light. So it can vary, like have a different range of light setups. One that I really like though is shooting in alleys. And it's fun because sometimes you go with a model, for example, and you say like, hey, do you see that alley? It's kind of sketchy and empty. Let's shoot over there. But when you see the result, it's just like, oh, okay, I know what you're saying. So I like alleys because it's like a straight light that goes to you both walls will create that 3D effect. Yeah, because the light will hit you front, and then you'll have shadows on both sides of the head. If the sun is setting from behind, it gets even better because you get that backlight usually in the hair. So yeah, probably that's one of my favorites to do.
I asked about lighting setup, and like he answered the question with the lighting setup, but it was like a physical space. My mind is getting bigger, my brain's expanding, and that's why we do these panels, just so I can get smarter, not y'all. I know a lot of photographers. Clearly everybody carries around however many lenses they need to, but everybody's got a favorite, right? Like everybody's got the one that you're like, I can get anything with this. So I'd like to hear, what is y'all's favorite lens?
Dang.
Oh, wait, is this like secret? I mean,
No. I mean, well, I know there's so many ways I can answer that. Like vintage glass, like which one's my favorite?
Okay,
Different things like that. I've got an old 50 1.2 that I love, an old 500 f5 mirror they only made like 2,000 of back in 1960. That Nikon made, which is great. But no, I mean, my staple lenses would be a 400 2.8. As far as anything wide for portrait work, things like that, I love a 35 1.4. That's one of my favorites. Lately, it's the new 50 1.2 Nikon makes for the mirrorless. It's just, I can't put that one down. So, but traditionally, like the two lenses I gravitate to the most would be the 400 and the 35.
Okay.
That's a big piece of glass.
It is. So.
How about you?
The nifty 50. Most of my work, I have 2470. I have the 7200 RF lens for Canon. But most of the work that I show is done with the good old $125 nifty 50.
Hey,
Yeah,
if it does it, it does.
it works. It challenges me to move and figure out the situation myself. Like I'm the
Okay.
zoom versus
Yeah.
having the zoom. So I love prime lenses, but
Yeah.
that's my go-to.
Prime lenses are fun.
I love prime lenses too. My favorite is the 85. Probably because it gives me the best ratio for me in terms of how close to the model I am. I don't have to shout if I'm like using a 105, for example. And if I want to get a really good close up, I don't have to be on their face with a 50, for example, or a 35. So I guess, for me, the 85 is the most versatile for what I do. I do pack a 50 with me all the times because sometimes you don't know how tight you might be in terms of space. But I don't use it as much as the 85.
Nice. I carried a DSLR around for a little bit. I know. I had an 85 millimeter, and that was it, and it worked. Photo, video, all 85 millimeter. No choice, because I couldn't afford anything else. So you guys clearly working with clients a lot, working on personal projects, doing all sorts of things. A lot of time, a lot of work, not a lot of time. Do you guys like to edit your photos yourselves? Do you have somebody you hire out that to?
It's either going to be me or it's going to be an editor. So a lot of it depends on the project. And so some of the commercial stuff, I'll handle everything, and then work with the client on selecting images. And then once they get to what the final selects are, if I need to have someone retouch it, I can, but I can do that as well. Magazines, typically they're going to call in and they'll have me send in either all the low-res JPEGs, and then they'll send me a request for the high-res or for the raw files, and send those in, and they handle everything from there. Or else I'll send them like a selection I'll go through, make a cut, and then just send them something a little tighter, and then they again come back and ask for X number of photos.
So when it's an editor, that decision seems to be something that's like a little out of your hands. Forgive me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, to a point. And one of the things that I made a point in doing back in my Sports Illustrated days, or at least early on, whenever I would go into the office once a year just to kind of show face, show some updated work, I would always go through, and sometimes there'll be a picture in there that you're really attached to, but the editor doesn't pick it, and you're like, oh, and so you might kind of push it a little bit. So what I do is I would take one of those photos and then have that in my recent work to show. And so I was sitting down with Nate, who was our baseball editor at one point, and he's going through his stuff, and he stops and he's like, because I was doing a lot of stuff with the Detroit Tigers, and he looks at me, he's like, you did this one for me. I'm like, yeah. He's like, did I pick this picture? I was like, no. And he's like, it's a nice shot. So everyone's like just kind of sneak those in. So, we have ones that we'll be attached to, and, that is what it is. But, like, truth be told, though, I hate, like, 98% of every single thing I shoot. Like, I look through it, I'm just like, trash, 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 trash. I'm like, that doesn't suck too bad. Trash, 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 and just go through it. And then, just hope that they're happy with the pictures. Once the client's happy with the pictures, like, then I'm like, all right, cool, I can relax a little bit and kind of actually appreciate the photos. But until then, like, I'm really hyper self-critical. So.
Some healthy, self-criticality, not always.
It's probably not healthy, but it's pretty intense, but it is what it is.
If you or a loved one
I'm high functioning.
Please seek a therapist.
I still edit all of my pictures. Not saying it's wrong or right, but it kicks my tail. I don't want to do it anymore. Matter of fact, he got on me the other day about it. For me personally, it's like a time killer, but I'm super critical of how my work goes out, so I've always been afraid to just let it go.
Yeah, it's your name on it.
Yeah.
I got
So,
Yeah.
I probably need to seek therapy about that too.
Okay. We're unpacking a lot here this evening.
But yeah, I can't let it go yet.
Okay.
Not just yet.
Hey, I like color editing photos. That's the most fun step to me. Way more fun than setting up lights, getting burned.
I do it myself 100%. I actually enjoy the process of editing. I think one of the reasons I get hired is because of that final look, mostly of the toning and the colors of the photos. I've been like retouching since I basically started photography because I wanted to deliver the whole package, and I really enjoy it. For me, it all comes down on how fast I can do my process the right way. So it's not that killer for me.
Okay. Now, Andrew, you touched on this a bit earlier. I don't know if you were like sneaking a look at my cards
I was not.
or what, but very important.
But I hacked your Instagram account, so I was able to see everything that came in. You can change that password.
I should have moved past 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 so long ago. But you're super self-critical of your photos. Other people may tend not to see your best photo is your best photo that day, just pass right over it. So really, how does the overall client experience affect business as a whole for the photographer?
I mean, for me, everything starts and stops with a client. So I don't stop until I know they're happy. And so, and if it's, if I still don't even feel like, again, kind of going back to being self-critical, I'm also hyper-competitive too. So like if I'm at a game, and the clients are sending me to the game, I have to produce the best stuff, because if you don't, your phone doesn't ring again. It's that simple. And so there's a lot of stress on it, but I'll go through. And with sports, if I'm covering a game, and that's actually one of my least favorite things to do is cover the games. I love the storytelling, the behind the scenes stuff, because I was a photojournalist and I love the portrait work. But if you're at a game, to an extent, a lot of it's luck. You don't know which way somebody's going to dive when they catch the ball or whatever. If they turn away from you, if I've got the back of somebody's head, some people may think that's a good photo. I'm like, that's going right in the trash. If I don't have eyes, ball, it's not a picture. Okay. And so the standards that I have are high. But then I'll go through and I'll look at who else shot what from the same assignment, and I've got to make sure that I came back with it. But I'm like, all right, cool. Now I can rest easy knowing that I did what I needed to do. But if somebody else did make at least a picture that I felt, I was like, man, I missed it and they got that. I was like, all right, props to them. But I'll go through, and whenever I'm looking at all my work and dissecting it, for my own benefit and for the benefit of the client, I'm looking at all the mistakes I made and figuring out how to never make those again. So I'm learning through failure. But no, everything starts and stops with the client being happy, and I'm pretty relentless in that pursuit.
So that's definitely top priority. You see that as the ultimate thing to keep in mind, because as long as that's they're passing on your name, they're happy with their work, they're calling you again.
It's a business,
It's a business.
And so I've got to make sure they're happy. And I've actually never done any marketing. Everything I've done has all been word of mouth. I've never sent on a mailer or a promo or any of that stuff. So it's
that's strong.
But got to keep working at it. It's tough.
How he ended that is kind of the same as mine. I don't self-promote or market, so my client satisfaction, when they share the image, for me, that's the review. that's them telling everybody that follows them or supports them or sees them, hey, I approve of what he created for me. So for me, it all starts and ends with the client as well. That's why it goes back to making sure my energy is good on set, because that gets the best results. And honestly, even if I took a bad picture, if they had a good experience, that picture can be better for them than it is for me. I might think the picture sucks, but they love it because they think about how they felt when they took the picture. So for me, it just goes back to how they felt on set and just making sure that they're satisfied through to the end, because that is my next client.
Yeah, for me, well, you can always shoot 100% what you want. You know, you have to take into account what they want too. So sometimes you're not as passionate about taking a specific photo, portrait, person, or whatever, but you always try to give your best, as you're saying, because it's all about the experience, it's all about the results. At the end of when I do a review of the photos that I took, I usually cheat a little, just like you described, like sometimes the photos that I like the most, I crop them a little bit better, or I adjust the light a little bit better. The idea is to make them skew or choose the ones that I like more. It happens to me like 90% of the time. So usually I'm happy with what they choose. So, you know, it brings me joy and all that. So.
Kind of have to lead the horse to the water, you know,
Yeah.
kind of show them where you want to go. But I mean, I think it's very much a collaborative process between us, client, and subject. Like, I mean, I think everybody's got to be involved in it, and whenever you have that happen, I mean, it's so much more fun for everybody when that's the case.
You can't talk a client into liking something they might not really don't like.
Yeah, so I guess that's the big takeaway is keep the client happy, whatever it is, because, you know, you may not have to go out there and really market yourself because they're going to be so happy with what you've done for them that they're going to tell their friends or they're going to reshare your post. And that is that self-marketing. That's getting the new calls and the new, you know, commissions?
Yeah.
Commissions in. So we're going to go ahead and try to, you know, hit through like the last of these big questions here, and then we'll bring it on over to the audience Q&A portion of the panel. Let me look through these real quick. Hit the big ones. I definitely don't know the answer to this one. Do any of you guys have any experience with brand partnerships?
Yes.
Do tell.
I'm a Nikon ambassador.
That's
And
very
so
cool.
They started up that program in 2013, and I was one of the original 16 that they invited in to be a part of that. So that's been a wild trip. It's a lot of fun. It's a partnership that I greatly value. It's nice to have access to a lot of equipment that they have that I might not, but especially in things when we're doing like really mega remote camera setups, it's nice to have that resource that I can lean on. I'm like, all right, I need like, whenever I had to go into the bubble to do March Madness this year for NCAA photos, I'm like, guys, I need 4 to 6 more D6s, and then just started like sending in all the lenses and everything like that. And then next thing you know, they have all my stuff. Next thing you know, everything arrives on the doorstep, and then I'm packed up, ready to go, and do all that. So, and then having to send it back. So.
Yeah.
What's that?
How do we become your
Can
friend?
can I hang out with you?
You both shoot Nikon, and we can talk. So.
What's your address?
I can.
Yeah. I used to shoot Canon, so. But yeah, so for that, that's great. And then I do work with G Technology. Well, now SanDisk Pro. I've been one of their ambassadors. And so discussions on like upcoming products and directions, and add, you know, our insight into, you know, the design process, which is, you know, really fun, especially whenever you start to see some of those things start to come through the pipeline into fruition. And you're like, hey, I asked for that, sweet.
Yeah, and like the value of having a set of equipment, a full complement of all of the same brand is a luxury because, you know, everybody's had like their mishmash sets before, and you know it just doesn't all want to work together like, you know, having everything under one brand, say Nikon, you know, gives you that advantage.
But I started off with just a consumer camera and a kit lens and the 75 to 300 zoom that was terrible. And I was like, shooting film, like I started off doing all that stuff. And then like I had, off-brand lenses and stuff like that because that's what I could afford. And then I was like, you know what? I'll pick up a couple of weddings so I can have the money to invest that into equipment and then be able to get the glass that I really wanted to do the things that I could do and just build. So.
All right.
I haven't actively done a brand partnership. I got an email today from Westcott wanting to do a brand partnership. So I can tell
There we
you
go.
how I
Now you can say yes.
okay. I'll tell you guys later how that goes.
We'll invite you back for the epilogue of this panel in a week. Everybody's invited, except for you two, just Marcus.
Fair enough. I'll come watch.
What about you?
For myself, it's been mostly with software companies. Partner with a company called Alien Skin. I don't know if you've used that software, but they have like really nice filters that looks like film. It's really nice and it's powerful, and it's interesting how sometimes they ask you for your feedback to see what is challenging in that software to recreate that you can do on the lead software, for example, Photoshop. Or I have a partnership with this other company called Topaz Labs. Mostly it's used for nature photographers, especially the sharpen artificial intelligence software, because it really recovers, it really removes noise and helps sharpen your image in a really interesting way. I started applying that into portraits and they got interested and they contacted me. So basically the benefits you get from that is just like free software, free releases, free updates, all that kind of stuff. And through Instagram, although it's not partnerships, you get sometimes a bunch of brands reaching out for you to try products. So either lighting or mostly lighting stuff or camera gear or that kind of stuff.
Okay. So I actually like looking at this card and like having gone through everybody's like portfolios. I was like, yeah, this is like clearly the get Andrew to talk about Nikon ambassador question. And we got kind of yeses across the board. Like the Westcott brand partnership, super cool. And then software is so valuable to any creative. Having good software is so important as your equipment. So like, yeah, partner with things, get advantages.
All comes down to relationships.
Yeah.
Photography expensive.
Absolutely.
Anything you do, develop relationships. It's so helpful. All right, we got 2 questions, and then I'm going to turn it over to these guys who look like they have some questions of their own. This one, I want to hear, from your guys' memory banks, from your on-set experiences. What has been the most memorable experience that you've had as a photographer?
Oof. Tough one.
I can let y'all think. We can play Jeopardy music.
One of them would probably be 2016. My director of photography at ESPN called me up in early June, and I was in Galveston. Spent 15 years in Indiana, so I was Indiana-based at the time in Indy. And we're down in Galveston with the family for vacation. My wife had just broken her foot and her ankle, and we had a 7-month-old as well as a 3-year-old. And so my DOP calls and was like, hey, how busy is the rest of your summer and your fall? And I'm like, it's pretty booked up and a little crazy right now, but for the right project, it can become flexible. And he's like, we think the Cubs are going to win the World Series. I want you to spend the rest of the year with the Cubs starting next week. I was like, okay. I told my wife, I was like, dear, I'm sorry, I know you can't walk and you can't drive. I'm going to be gone for a little bit. And so I was flying family up from West Texas and rotating people in and out so they could take care of, my wife and help take care of the baby while I was going back and forth to Chicago and LA and wherever else we'd be going and doing stuff. And then so, fortunately, they win, although whenever Araldis gave up that home run to Raji Davis, I thought I was going to throw up because I had all this work that I had built up, and Game 7 of the World Series, and then I knew from the first fastball that he threw whenever Davis put it 3 decks up foul, I was like, ooh. When you look at David Ross, who was catching at the time, I see him look over at Joe Madden, and he's like, he doesn't have it. And then after that, it's just like slider, 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 and Rogers foul, foul, foul. It's like, you're going to throw me a freaking fastball, and he did, and put it off the camera in the outfield. I was like, but then I got to finish the night like drenched in champagne and doing all the stuff in the locker room, which was pretty remarkable, and then had to drive 5 hours home because Marriott screwed up the hotel reservation.
Of
So
course.
after we leave Progressive Field at like 4 o'clock in the morning after all that, and so at least if I got pulled over and the officer's like, sir, you smell like alcohol. I'm like, no, let me explain this. I've got pictures I can show you. I mean, so that's one of them. I mean, portrait shoot with pyrotechnics inside one time. Small fire, nothing to be alarmed about, but we had fire department there, so that was good. But yeah, we've had some crazy ones.
That excuse for the cop literally only works like once every 125 years too, or whatever. You got a big story. Can you beat Dean with the Cubs when they win the World Series?
Mine would probably be when I was in New York. I was doing press run with Tyra Banks, and we were on an elevator going up to Time Magazine, and I worked with her like a couple of times, but I never really talked, mostly because I was scared, because it's Tyra Banks. And so she just, on the elevator, she just started asking me questions. She was like, hey, Marcus, you married? I was like, no.
No.
I'm like, oh, we finna date? Okay. She's like, you got any kids? I'm like, no.
Not
She's
yet.
like, okay. She was like, okay, we get off the elevator. I take the pictures of her before she goes and does an interview, and I'm editing, and she's standing on my shoulders, and the other person with me is standing on my shoulder, sitting next to me. He's like, wow, it must be a lot of pressure to have Tyra Banks standing over your shoulder while you're editing. Thanks, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's a lot. So she walks away and she comes back. She tells me to make her calf muscles bigger because she doesn't have any calf muscles. And, and then she was like, I was asking you all those questions for a specific reason. I was like, okay. And she was like, well, I was wondering how much it'll cost to relocate you because I want you to help build my next company. I was like, so I went to the bathroom, I cried. But yeah, that would probably be like my biggest achievement because like 2 years before that, I was literally taking pictures of dogs in the park and flowers. Like,
Hey, and then, Tyra Banks, so there's levels to it. I'm glad I asked this question. These are just cool story after cool story. A lot of pressure to follow up.
I don't have any big story like these guys have, but I do remember one that was close to my heart because it was when I was starting. Probably I was, 5 months into doing portraits in LA, and then I got hit up by a small clothing brand, but I really didn't know what I was doing, honestly, and she wanted me to take pictures of all their clothing with 5 models. And I remember I was really nervous because I didn't know any other people, any other photographers. I didn't know what to charge, how much time, what to bring, what to say. But at the same time, I didn't want to look like a newbie, like I don't know what I'm doing. So I remember I was rehearsing all of this with my wife at home, like in different stages, right? She helped me write a contract. Luckily, she's a lawyer, so for me it was easier. Okay, we had that part covered. But yeah, when I was there, I was trying just to act like as natural as I can. I don't know. Hopefully, I could film myself, and I was not just like a robot. I feel pretty good about it, but it was really shocking. One time, I felt like I wanted to puke, honestly, because you have like all of these people looking at you, the stylists, you have like makeup artists, you have the models, you have the girl of the brand and all that. You have we were outdoors. I didn't know what to expect in terms of permissions for the city, because you don't know if cops are gonna chase you. I've been kicked out of so many places for shooting outdoors, so it was really an experience. But I think when you're facing those kind of things is what helps you grow at some point.
Excellent answer. And for our last question today, I think we're gonna hit on what I think is the most important one. You have one piece of advice for aspiring photographers. What is it?
Fundamentals. Just like practice your fundamentals. I mean, it's, just kind of like with athletes. I mean, you've got to build on those fundamentals before you can get to the advanced things. I mean, you got to learn to dribble before you can dunk. I mean, you would think, unless you're just really God-given on athletic abilities. But no, I mean, just kind of really, practice the fundamentals. Pick up the camera, get your reps in, and then through doing that, you become more proficient. And whenever you do that, that's whenever your creativity can really blossom.
For me, it's don't give a F. Sorry, I can't cuss. That's more so personal to me because I've noticed that as I've grown, I'm starting to get more afraid because I feel like, oh, this person's watching me, or what does my audience think, or will I lose a client because I'm expressing myself this type of way, versus when I was not whatever I am now. I was hungry. It didn't matter. I felt this way. I wanted to create this way. I wanted to put it out that way. And for that side of me, I admired that older me because I felt how I felt, and I put it out there, and I just don't care what the opinions of people who do not directly affect your career think, because all you're doing is giving the power away.
If they aren't the client, then they can go to hell. I like it.
For me, I would say practice as well. Put yourself out there. You have to put yourself into challenging situations that sometimes you don't know, because those are what will make you grow. It's like when you are giving a presentation of a subject that you think you dominate, and at some point, it's not when people starting ask you questions, it's when you get better about it. So practicing, you cannot expect just because you bought like an expensive camera or an expensive lens, it's just gonna come out from there at all. I know a lot of people that has like really expensive gear, but not as good quality. And I know people that has like almost a cell phone, and they are really good with it. So just put yourself out there, practice, especially retouching, especially how you're feeling, if you're feeling comfortable with the person in front, with the model, directing, speaking up, all that kind of stuff.
You guys gave such great answers to me all day. I feel like I've got so many more questions to ask. It almost makes me want to do a photography 202 maybe in the future, have you guys back. But at this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to y'all, let you guys get asking. And somebody will hand me a mic. Oh, never mind. Whoa.
So I was thinking about last year when the protests and everything. I was thinking about last year when the protests were going on, and I was thinking about going out and shooting, and you really think about what is actually necessary to get the shots that you're looking for, and then traveling. What are some travel necessities that you guys have to have, whether it be a favorite lens, or you have to have two bodies, you have to have a certain stand, or you have to have a light on you?
Yeah.
I'm not known for traveling light. That's the tough thing with me. But kind of going back to kind of favorite lenses. I mean, whenever I drive to New Mexico, like I'll probably have the 50 1.2 on a body, and that'll be just kind of in the passenger seat as I'm driving around a 35. But a lot of it kind of depends on the assignment. So if I'm going to be on the sidelines, like I'm probably going to be going with the Trinity, which will be a 14-24, a 24-70, a 7200. And then if I've got the fourth camera, then I'm either, I'll have the 400 on that, but if I'm keeping it 3, I'll probably lose the 24-70. That way I've got wide, mid-range telephoto and then long. Protest, it's been a long time since I've done any of that stuff or any rally stuff. I did some of that back in the day. On that, you just want to be able to travel light and be able to move around quick. So, I mean, it's going to be one camera, maybe two. You don't want to have to mess with having two bodies. You're not having to mess with changing lenses. So you can just grab, boom, shoot, see, move, and be able to follow kind of what's going on, just being able to stay really, really fluid in that sense. So in that situation, lighter is by far better. So.
I guess I can only speak to travel. I jump in and off of planes every week, so I kind of have a system. I take a carry-on, I take a backpack, and I kind of stop right there. And I take like a little satchel, because the satchel is like if I jump between photography and like a little bit of video, I keep like my microphones in there, I keep like spare batteries off in there. And the reason why I do the carry-on is I can keep big stuff in there, but if I realize I get there and I was like, oh, I overpacked, I can jump to the backpack and I can move light, I can be more efficient. And I just kind of stay with that as much as possible. I try to avoid checking bags because that gets costly. But just really the only thing I can say with travel is develop a system and just keep it in rotation so you can get through the airport as quick as possible. It sucks.
To piggyback on that, like for me, it's a think tank roller for the big glass and then a backpack. But I have to check a lot of gear. And so if you do that, getting a membership with American Society of Media Photographers, things like that, that'll help you out, because if you're flying American, they have a policy that helps out media photographers. So it's $50 a case, up to 25 cases, up to 100 pounds a case. And so, yes, I have it memorized, and oftentimes I'm having to educate and inform their gate people on what their own policy is, and then they usually have to call a manager to come over and then help them out. No, this is how you do it, and they get everything set up, and they're shocked because I'm coming through with a smart cart that's stacked to the ceiling with gear that you're pulling in there. And then there's many times that they let me hop past the counter because the lady's not going to be strong enough to lift, an 85-pound case of grip equipment and put it on the belt for her. So you're throwing cases around and all that stuff. So
be prepared for TSA to hate you.
Yeah.
For me, I usually do more natural light, so I'm like super light. If these guys are light, I'm super light probably. I just carry my backpack. I have a camera and 2 lenses usually. For a long time, I didn't have like a lot of equipment, so I learned how to be like resourceful with what I had. Like that's how I learned to bounce light from different surfaces, or use like the floor, or use like a window from a car, or the reflection from the sun across the street, things like that. So I usually do it really, really, really light. 50.
All right. Yeah, I used to like shoot real estate, just commercial stuff, and I lied to TSA about every single battery I put on that flight. They did not know about it.
They'll get you with the fines, though, if they catch you, though.
Got a question. I'm here with my mentor, and he was telling me about back in the days when everybody had film. And cameramen made a lot of money. And then digital came, and then everybody became a photographer. And now we have mirrorless. And I'm starting to see some stuff about AI cameras and drones and automation. What do you guys see the future of photography?
I mean, I see the future as being mirrorless. I mean, I've got a drone as well. But yeah, with what the mirrorless cameras can make, it's phenomenal. But I came up in the film era. Like, I didn't touch a digital camera until I started my first day at my first newspaper. That was the first time I handled a digital camera. But it's nice to be able to go back and forth and have those roots and kind of straddle both worlds. And so I did, all that paid dividends. I held on to some old Polaroid Type 55 4x5 film. And so it shoots your typical positive Polaroid, and you tear it open, it's got a negative on the inside. And so I had, it'd been discontinued, I think, in the early 2000s, and this is 2015. I'd been moving this stash of film from like house to house, and my wife was just really getting bored up because I'd take like the bottom shelf of the bottom drawer of the refrigerator, and I'd move the film with me. And finally ended up doing a portrait project for ESPN on the 100th anniversary of the Indy 500.
Love that
Did a
series,
bunch of
by the way.
drivers, so
Check
that
it
was
out.
a lot of fun. So it was fun to be able to lug a 4x5 camera and have to be behind the black cloth and running and having a little radio flyer trailer with chemicals in it and everything like that to do some stuff on the fly. But it's fun that despite how technology is advancing so rapidly, that now you're seeing more film stuff even coming out. So I think that
You've heard of the Atlas camera, right?
Mm-hmm.
The AI.
Yeah, I've heard a little bit. I haven't researched much of that yet, so which will be interesting. The argument from that is, I mean, if it can do everything, at what point does the eye not become responsible for the creativity, and the mind that's behind that?
Yeah.
So, it'll be interesting.
I'm with him. The future is mirrorless. AI is coming, whether we like it or not, but they can't they can't create like us. Like their minds don't see things the way I do. Their objective is just to achieve a job. So
There's no emotion involved.
there's no
in it.
emotion. Yeah, basically. So I mean, what I always do, because I mean, it's been adapting. I don't know anything about film, but I came DSLR and I've jumped into mirrorless. You just take what they give you and you add your own emotion and creativity to it, and you make it yours. Like you own the technology. You don't let the technology own you. That's that on it.
Yeah, I'm with you guys, and you have to use the technology at your advantage, in my opinion. Like before jumping into mirrorless, I was using my DSLR, and probably I was missing. I shoot a really high aperture or low aperture, usually at 1.4, so it's really easy to miss the focus. So with a DSLR, you know, it's you know, probably here miss. I don't know. Probably 70% of my shots were on focus, and the rest were a tiny bit off. With mirrorless, I've had shoots where I nail 100% of the shots. So at this point, you know, you don't miss it, and it's just more of you trying to focus on what you want to create, like generate an expression, an emotion, feeling out of the session, more than focusing on the buttons and the complicated things.
I mean, then the next cameras I buy will, whenever the Nikon Z9 comes out, I mean, I'll buy a couple of those. But aside from that, it's going to be that. And I've also been looking at an old 8x10 film camera lately. So, you know, that kind of be the next thing, just because I still a lot of that ability to really slow down that I enjoy.
I'm just going to start shooting with an iPhone.
Most best camera is the one you have in your hand. So, you know.
Yeah, they just got to keep making that sensor bigger. Do we have any more questions? Yeah?
I've got the mic now. I really appreciate y'all's insights. It's really great having y'all here and kind of learning your stories. I am really interested in hearing a little bit more about how you interact with your subjects. Because I know that you both, or all three of you, have kind of different subjects that are your kind of typical subjects, whether that be portraits or shooting on the sidelines or really delving into someone's emotions and someone's feelings. Just how do you interact with people, and how do you kind of get them to where they need to be to get the pictures that you are hoping to get?
Carefully. A lot of it depends on the personality of the individual I'm working with. The other day I had to go to Miami to do a shoot for a blockchain group, and it was with their founder that doesn't like to be in front of the camera, has not been photographed in a couple of years, hasn't been to the US in a couple of years. So they sent me to go photograph him, and so at this point I'm like, they tell me, hey, he's particular and he does not like to be in the spotlight, and so I was like, well, this is going to be a lot of fun. So and we've got to shoot his headshot. So you know, on that one I was like, all right, we're bringing a little bit of lighting. We ended up just going available light for that, and just because it allowed us to move and be more fluent and stuff like that. But you know, and then working with athletes, some of them are not great to work with. Some of Matt there's laughing. You know, some of them are alphas, and some of them are just, you know, can be a pain in the butt. So one of them, you know, I'd say, that's always been good for me. Football guys, like wide receivers are great. Like they usually come with a lot of energy. But whenever I was doing some stuff with the Titans, the year whenever DeMarco Murray showed up, and we're like, hey DeMarco, you know, can you strap up? No, dog. All right. Hey DeMarco, like, you know, this is for the Titans. Like, we need you to just like run, give us a little cut here. No, dog. Like, all right, cool. And so, you know, then the next year we're doing it, and day one of the shoot, we've got him on day two. After day one, like I go through, I'm analyzing everything I've shot. We're there at 7 o'clock the next morning. We're making our changes and kind of getting everything really dialed in. And we've got DeMarco like at 1:20. And next thing you know, they've got practice at 10. And he was in there lifting early. And then next thing he comes walking by and he's like, you'll be ready for me in 15 minutes? And I was like, yeah, man, I'll be ready for you in 15 minutes. After I was like, oh, shit. I was like, guys, we got to hurry. And they're like, wait, I was like, DeMarco's going to be here in 15 minutes, and I need this thing to be perfect. And they're like, but he's not here until 1:20. I said, I know, but he's going to be here in 15 minutes. And he did it because he had a hard out because they had a mandatory practice. So he knew we could not keep him longer than our amount of time that we were going to have him for. but he didn't. He wanted to do it on his terms, and he didn't want to do it with anybody from the Titans there. And so he showed up and was like, "Hey, DeMarcus, can you yeah, man, whatever you need. Hey, can you give me a cut? Oh yeah, absolutely. And then a lineman, he and I got into it the first year, and but he had some issues with the team, and then the night of the draft, they were going to be drafting another person of his position, and he was not happy about having to be there and cussing up and down, and in front of the whole team. And he was like, "Hey, I'm just going to get this done now." And he's like, "Where do you want me to stand?" I'm like, "Right there." And he's like, walked out there, and it flipped me off. I was like, "Oh, it's like that." I knew everything was in focus. I didn't even look through the camera. I just ding, 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 look this way, ding, 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 look that way, ding, 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 done. It's like, get the. And he never had anybody talk to him like that. He was like, "Well, do you need anything else?" I'm like, "Yeah, go stand over there." Took one picture and done. And then he peeled out of the parking lot whenever he was leaving.
All right.
Well, then the funny part of that story, sorry, this was a longer one. Titans bring me in to do a game against the Broncos. End up making this gorgeous backlit picture of him. He's lots of tattoos, flexing hard, little sunburst off the top of the helmet. It's gorgeous. Got one of the most loved pictures that the Titans had on Instagram that whole season. And of course, right after the game, his fiance's messaging me, wanting me the picture. His mom's messaging me, wanting the picture. And I just ghost them both. I'm like, no. But then going back the next year, back to take pictures again. Who's the first player we run into when we get in the building? This guy. And everyone's like, "Oh, hey, so this is Andy's going to be taking our pictures this year." I was like, "Yeah, I remember you from last year." And he's like, "All right." We go in, we're setting up. He's in the bubble working out. And I had brought a jump drive that had the picture on it. And he's the last guy in there working out. And he's walking out by himself. And so I walk up to him. I was like, "Yo," tossed it to him. He's like, "What's this?" I was like, "That picture you from the Broncos game?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "That's the picture." Next day when he took his pictures, we had every single thing we could possibly. He was 15 minutes early. He came, messed around with the other guys when they were doing their stuff. Like, yeah.
Nice.
Working with personalities is a trip. So especially some of the young ones. Some of those 5-star kids that come in as freshmen and think they own the world. That's fun.
Taylor Warren?
This is where I'm actually really good at, is working with engaging with my clients. I work with a lot of female clients, so I kind of like treat them like I'm dating them. I do. I come in because especially I work with a lot of new people sometimes, not so much anymore actually. I come in the house, ask them how they're doing. "Oh yeah, my flight sucked." Like, I'm their husband. All that stuff before they get on set. Like, if they are struggling and I see the team is not doing well, I'll put their shoes on. I'll hold my arm out and walk them to the set. And by the time I get to set, they've opened up so much just from me just interacting with them in non-verbal ways that I can pretty much get whatever I want out of them. And a lot of my clients, basically, a lot of them come in there they know what they're doing, but they'll always say, I don't know how to take a picture. I don't know how to. Tyra Banks told me that. She's like, "Mark, what do you want to do?" I'm like, why are you playing with me? But yeah, I just realized that a lot of my clients come on set as confident as they are in whatever field they work in or whatever they do. When they come on your set, they don't know anything. You're in charge. So you're back to the energy thing. If my energy is not right on set, they're going to feel like they're going to be even more uncomfortable. So I make sure I enter a room with the right type of energy, with the right type of conversation. Even if it's fake, I'm gonna be the happiest person outside as I could possibly be, because they could possibly be completely uncomfortable, completely insecure, completely not knowing what they're doing there. And it's up to me to make sure they're okay. So I date them for the day, basically. Then I go home and be an introvert.
Ghost them. Never text back.
I do something similar like you, honestly. It's good to take the time, even, when you're in the shoot with someone. Do I stand here, right now? And just, no, just chill, where you can start talking. You can should we get a coffee or something? Especially if you're walking in the street, or come with me, let's just go see these streets, or let's see these other backgrounds. And while you're walking, you're just talking and having fun at some point, and you're laughing, and they say, "Stand there for me," and then you keep talking, and then 2, 3, and then, "Oh, I feel nervous with this pose." And sometimes something that I do is just I do it myself. but in a funny way, right? So they can see. So try to do this, and I started posing. Honestly, that breaks the ice. They start laughing and smiling. Okay, so I'll do that. I'm sure you'll do it better than me. And whenever they try to do it and act naturally, it helps a lot. But it breaks the ice when I'm fooling around, just trying to model and do whatever. I'm really bad, and I think that's what helps.
I'm really good at it, actually.
All right, who's got the mic?
Sexy poses.
I'm good at sexy.
Any other questions?
Got a big mirror in my house.
You're right.
Sexy. You got it.
That's what I do.
So, how many years did it actually take before you guys actually just like launched off with the whole photography thing and actually got comfortable with doing what you guys love to do? Like, I know you have to crawl before you walk, so that's all I was saying. Like, what is like the time frame? What it took?
I can start. I don't know. It's just I think it's a continuous evolution. I can see it in the probably 5 years. I thought I was happy where I was at, but then my style keeps evolving in terms of like I don't know, my editing process, or I learned something new and now I changed it, or I'm now mixing techniques, or I'm happy where I am right now, but I'm sure that probably in the next year or next 2 years I'll probably be happy where I am at too. So I don't know, for me just start happening. And as I was telling on the story of my first clothing brand, you know, it just happens, and you just need to be ready to tackle that opportunity with what you know and what you can exploit out of that.
You asking how long it take before we get comfortable with what we're doing?
Yeah, just like the whole process.
I don't know if my answer is a good answer, but I'm never comfortable. Like, even in my years of doing it, like I'm always nervous when I work with a client, even if it's somebody I still work with, because at the end of the day, I still don't know if I can get the results. I'm never comfortable with my style of shooting because I'm always mentally evolving. And like he said, like I've had phases where I've gotten comfortable, and those phases are also the same phases where I felt like I was not a great photographer because it became too autopilot. So I'll sometimes self-destruct or blow up my whole photography world just to rebuild it in another way type of thing, because I work better in uncomfortable situations. But I got more comfortable with being a photographer probably about 3 years in when I realized that I loved it. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I share a similar timeline. Like when I was comfortable being a photographer, I graduated, my degree's in journalism, so you know, I can write as well. But my first newspaper, I was business page editor, general assignment reporter, and I was a photographer like 1 day a week. But by 3 years in and awards coming in and stuff like that, and then I haven't applied for jobs anymore. Then at that point I was like, all right, that feels comfortable, you know, because everybody's reaching out to me like, hey, we come work here. I'm like, okay, cool, but like I echo their sentiments. Like I'm still not like comfortable creatively. Like I think that's what's pushing me, and I do my best work when I'm uncomfortable. And if I find that like I'm starting to kind of, you know, go through the motions a little bit, then I need to challenge myself. And so when we were all locked down last year, I'm like, all right, I have no idea what sports is going to look like for the fall. And so 2 weeks later, there's this professional rock climber I know, and next thing you know, I'm hanging off the side of a cliff in Colorado. And it is easily the most physically demanding shoot I've ever done, because you've got a 45-minute to an hour and 15-minute hike up a 45-degree incline with gear, and that's just to get to the bottom of the wall. And then you still have to go vertical on a rope and then get in position, and you're going up and down with gear. And then you still have to have the endurance to get down, which with hauling the gear, that's not easy as well. And I think I was a goat in my last life. Like I'll climb just about anything, probably eat just about anything I can, but I'm comfortable being in catwalks, but truth be told, I don't really love heights. You know, I'll sit on the skid of a helicopter when I'm doing aerials, but I don't necessarily love heights. It's like the taking off, like I'm not cool. But once we're going, I'm like, all right, you know, whatever happens, happens at that point. But hanging off the side of a cliff, I'm like, all right, there's a lot of adrenaline here. But at the same time, I'm like, damn, these views are something else. And at that point, you're like, all right, now how do I put all this together? Because then, I mean, you have the physical challenge, but then it all comes down to the creative challenge, which is making something unique. And that's always the pursuit. So.
Yeah. Great.
good light coming.
That is. I've been watching it kind of change on the floor and coming up and stuff.
Hey guys, my name is Simi, and I'm curious about a pivotal moment in your career where you dropped the ball and what you learned from it.
Gotta relive some shame here.
I can start that. This was probably my first major client, like the celebrity clients or whatever they are. Before that, like I started working with this heavy big time stylist, and he just had me documenting office meetings, shooting boxes, and blah 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 blah. And he hit me and he was like, "Hey, you want to try something for real?" I was like, okay. So he flew a client in, had this big production thing set up, video, a whole team. It's probably like 20 people on set. No, I had never shot on a set with multiple people, and it wasn't even a set, it was a house. So we did all this stuff, filmed some interviews, took some pictures, sent over the raws, and when I tell you she like trashed it, she called the stylist and said, "Sir, you're going to another level, and where that level is, you need to drop this guy." Man, like, kid you not, probably for about 4 days straight, I cried. I was like, dang, is my camera bad? Am I bad? Like, what happened? Was it just too much going on around me? And about a week later, he called me and he was like, "You want to try again?" Blew that one out of the water, perfectly fine. And finally, like a year to the date later, she had to stand in front of me again. And I was scared. I was like, oh, she's tough. But she sat down and she told me, she was like, "I did that on purpose." She's like, she was like, "Your pictures were really bad." But she was like, "I wanted to see if you were built to do what you were doing, if you would take that the right way and make something out of it." And then we did our photo shoot, and I sat there and I watched her look at it again, and she was like, "You're not bad anymore."
Redemption. I love it. Oh, two come to mind. First one would be Shaq and LeBron's first game together in Cleveland. Anything that could go wrong with remote cameras went wrong. It was also a preseason game, and so I talked with the Cavs photographer, and I was like, "All right, give me the run." I was like, "Which way are they going to start the game?" He's like, "Oh, they're definitely going to start going that way." Well, preseason, they don't have to start the game going that way. So we'd set up the cluster, the main primary cluster remotes going toward that basket, and next thing you know, it's preseason, so Shaq and LeBron are only going to play a little bit of the first quarter, and they started going the other way. And I was like, "Oh, this sucks. This is not good." And so it just entirely threw me off, and it still comes down to the most important camera is the one in your hands. And I made a couple nice pictures, but it was bad. And I had to tell my editors, like, "Porter, this is going to be bad." But any of y'all watch Ted Lasso? TV series? Yeah. He's got this thing where he's talking with one of the guys, and he's like, "What's the happiest animal?" And he's like, "It's a goldfish. It's got a 10-second memory." He's like, "You got to be a goldfish." And so I kind of had to be a goldfish. Although leaving Cleveland the next day, this is before like iPhones and the GPS was not going good, and I kind of lost it on the GPS unit and kind of went into a couple pieces. And my assistant Kevin, who's a good friend of mine, was just scared half to death on the passenger seat, and so we had to go to Detroit to shoot a game there the next night, and just crushed it on that one. So I was like, I just had to be a goldfish, forget all that stuff, and then get back to doing what I know I can do, and just try to have that short memory. And then shoot for Chevy, and I had a lot of projects going on, and so I entrusted an assistant of mine to doing some of the production, and he felt like he could do it, and so I put him in a position to give him a chance to learn and grow. And he forgot a couple key things in the production stuff, and things are going to go bad on a shoot. It's going to happen. And to be a great photographer, you have to be a good problem solver, and it's going to just try to figure out how to put crap back together when everything's going sideways. But on this one, we came away with photos, but it was not the experience that I like to deliver for the clients, and I knew at that point, I was like, this particular client with Chevy is like, they're not going to call again, and they didn't, and it wasn't at any fault of mine, but at the end of the day, it's your name on it. The people working for you, it's your name on it, and so that was a lesson that I had to learn on that one. It wasn't unfortunate, but I'll put my guys in chances to fail because they'll learn something from it. I learned something from it. Tough lessons to learn, but.
Yeah, I agree in that part that you need to be a problem solver, because sometimes you get in challenging situations. Most of the shoots that I do are not as challenging situations that I cannot be prepared. Luckily, I haven't forgot equipment, cards, cameras always charged. I have all my stuff. I have backups like batteries, memory cards, and all that kind of stuff. My lens has never failed, or my camera, thank God, because I know that stuff happened. In terms of lighting, you have to be like really resourceful with what you have. And in different situations, like I did this shoot for Lexus and an event, and they wanted me to take photos of 2 different cars, the LS, which is really, really nice car. And to my surprise, they were in platforms, turning around, and they had like preset lighting. Like it was really, really horrible. And so I was already stressing out, and I said like, crap, this is gonna be horrible. You know, these guys are paying me this money, and I'm just gonna deliver some trash. And luckily, the guys that were setting up the cars, that were moving the lights, all of those guys were speaking Spanish and Mexican. And these guys are, oh yeah, you homie. And I started talking to them in Spanish, and I got them at some point to turn off the lights, stop moving the car, like get people out of the shot and all that kind of stuff. But it was more kind of like trying to solve the problem, because I just saw a disaster. When I saw the setup, I arrived and I said like, holy crap, this is gonna be bad.
I'm glad y'all are asking these questions. Like I was gassing them up practically, let them talking about all the things they did good. Y'all were getting them vulnerable, talking about the times they messed up. Like it.
That's one since I have it in my hand. My name's Sterling. How do you find the balance between inspiration and creativity? I think a lot of times we look at people like yourselves and then try to emulate something like that you're doing, and then you kind of see that it looks way too similar. How do you kind of find that balance between being creative and still, I guess, paying homage to the people that are before you?
Going the opposite direction, like with sports photography. I mean, you see so much of the same stuff, and so kind of like my family tree at SI, it was myself. I learned under Bill Frakes, who learned under Heinz Klutmeyer, who learned under John G. Zimmerman. So like we're like the creative tree, where we like to do a lot of the really oddball stuff. And so that always kind of inspired me. Like I'll look to the old iconic sports guys that were really pushing the envelope back in the early film days. Like that for me was really inspiring. But aside from that, like when it comes to lighting, like I don't look at any sports photographers. Like I'm looking at old fashioned and things like that. Like I'm looking at different genres to try to bring some sort of different look, some sort of different influence into what I'm doing. And so yeah, I just try to not look at anything sports related. I mean, I'll look at the old Titans and say, all right, how might they have approached that, and then pull something from another genre and then pull it in. So.
Same. I follow photographers, and I have photographers that I admire, but I don't look for that for inspiration. I don't really look at people. Like I have a music background, so a lot of my inspiration comes from sounds and music and stuff like that. So that's why I often take like long walks. So I work out early in the morning because I just listen to music and I let that take me somewhere. But if I do see a photographer that does something I like, I'm like him. I look at it, find out what I like about it, and I go the opposite direction.
And find a way to use the technique, because so much stuff has been done, but like how are you going to put your own voice to it? Because there's so many people that get caught up in just trying to replicate what they've seen, as opposed to trying to figure out a way to, all right, analyze how it happened and then find a way to put your own spin on it.
Yeah, I think at some point looking at different parts of art, like paintings, for example, or even movies, I like music a lot as well, and sometimes I kind of imagine situations out of music, just what I would do. Like I love that feeling when I got to watch MTV videos, you know, back in the 90s probably, and then you would see all the artists releasing all these new songs and how they would tell stories in these music videos, and sometimes that I think that got stuck on me. So sometimes I listen to songs. And I'm just like listening to the lyrics, and I said like, oh yeah, maybe I want to try something like this. There's this artist, Kaleo, I think it's the way it's pronounced. They released recently a song called Hey Gringo, and I really like what it says, so I'm thinking like I'm doing something related to what that song is inspiring me. And it could be any genre, actually, so that's what I take it.
All right, guys. I think we got time for one more question tonight. If you've got a burning question you want to ask these photographers, now is the time. We're done. You got one? Questions? Okay.
How did you get into photography?
Her question was how we got into photography. For me, I grew up around it, but I never really took it or myself seriously. My mom worked at the newspaper in my hometown, and she worked on the ad side of things, but I'd go in and see what the photographers were doing in the dark room and just being there with the red lights and kind of watching images come to life on paper. Like, that was pretty cool, but never took it seriously. But I wanted to tell stories, which is why I ended up getting a degree in journalism, but A&M also didn't have a photo degree. So, I wanted to kind of be well-versed in everything I could do, and then I just gravitated toward the camera because it was the most effective tool for me to do that.
I was trying to be a rapper. I really was. I had almost done recording like what I thought was an album and spending a lot of money in studio time and traveling because I was recording in Houston. And I was looking for a way to cut budget. So I went to the pawn shop and bought a $70 Panasonic film camera.
There you go.
And I'm a perfectionist, so before I shot myself, I wanted to know what I'm doing. So I started taking pictures of my sisters, the dogs, the trees, the flowers, the people running in the park. And then a high school senior messed around and paid me to take some pictures. And I was like, oh, you can make money taking pictures. And then it just turned into, I realized that like I was speaking more, like it was more of my voice coming out in my pictures because I wasn't as much of a talker back then. So I just kept going and never rapped again, basically. I rap in a car though.
For me, I think it was when I was about to get married, and at that point we met this photographer. It was a wedding photographer. By the way, I hate wedding photography, but because of all the pressure you get on top of you. But when I met him, he was so passionate about it, and I've always been a visual person. Like I do a lot of visual design and user experience and user interfaces and all that. I used to, I have a computer systems engineering background and a 3D experience as well in the 3D industry. So when I was doing like even models and cartoons and that kind of stuff, I've never thought about doing it in actual people rather than on like simulated stuff until I saw the passion that this guy had for the people that he was photographing, like taking photos of. And when I started, I started shooting at everything. You know, I think my favorite was using a macro lens at that point of time. So I was like even like, you know, shooting like a grain of salt, a drop, like anything that don't talk back to you, honestly. So, but I had a good time. That's I think how I started feeling comfortable with the camera and the settings and not looking back and thinking. It was just like more natural. And then I switched into people with this project of shooting strangers, and I think that's what caught my eye. I say like, oh, okay, so now I can combine all of these things. So. Moved to LA, and it was also a way for me to meet people. So I started shooting fashion bloggers back then. I reached out to every single model that I could. No one replied, honestly, probably for the following 6 or 7 months. And when I started shooting fashion bloggers, you start getting the mouth to mouth, the word out of mouth. And you getting recommendations and all that, and then at some point it starts turning around and they are looking for you. So I think that's how it developed naturally. My wife was happy that I was doing fashion bloggers, but when it switched naturally to models, she wasn't that happy.
All right, guys. That, I think, is really going to do it for our Maker Talk today. I've had a lot of fun sitting up here talking with you guys, listening to your great answers. You guys had great questions. I hope you got as much out of this as I did. Before we all sign off here, I really would be remiss if I wouldn't mention that this is Maker's Gym, and we have got a ton of photography studios and cameras, and we will be offering a photography workshop very soon. So if you want to go ahead, cut your teeth some more, maybe get a little better with the old camera, please check it out. I really think there's a lot to gain there. I know our members absolutely love the space, and I really hope that you will too.
Will this video be online?
This video will be online. It'll be on our Facebook and YouTube. And I think that does it. Thank you guys.
Thank you very much.
You did so good.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Thank you, man.
Made my job